point of children, and I want to ask anyone who has experience, Jill, beginning with you, what do you say to the children?
We had to be fairly honest with them because people were writing about it.
What does fairly honest mean?
Well, Tony's version of it, Tony, again, was very optimistic, and they listened to their dad, and they had to trust that what he said was honest, and I think he was honest with them, and just they were going to fight it. And Tony's worst case scenario, he said, it'll probably come back, but I'm gonna keep fighting it. I'm gonna live in 2-year increments is how he felt about it.
What did you say to them toward the end? You knew the end was coming.
Actually, this is when the doctor stepped in, and I saw him the other day, and I'm so grateful for him. At that point in time, I was drained. I was exhausted, and I told a friend, it's like, I'm doing everything you're doing, but you're walking along the water in the hard sand. I'm walking and talking with you, but I'm walking in the deep sand. It's exhausting. I had nothing left, and the doctor said, would you like me to talk to the children? And he did. He took them in a room with me and explained to them in the gentlest way that their dad's heart would probably just get tired. It would get very tired from fighting. And I thought it was very nice that he did that. He helped me. And at the end, I keep looking back and then thinking of all the help I got. That was wonderful. I didn't know what else to say to them. We'd kept them as hopeful as we could, and we stayed as hopeful as we could. But I knew the end was near, and I think Tony knew. And so for the doctor to take that role was wonderful.
Liz, did you ever prepare Alex? And you had other children.
Yes, we have a son who was a year older than Alex, and then we had 2 more boys while she was in treatment. So at the time that she passed, they were 10, 6, and a toddler. Did we prepare Alex? She was prepared. With a child with cancer, it's very different because as a parent, you want to protect them and keep them positive and not tell them everything and make them think everything's going to be okay. And we believed that for many years. When it became fairly likely and very unlikely that she would be cured, we knew that she knew the reality. When she was sick, she lost a very dear friend to the same cancer that she had. And then we knew that it was time to have a conversation with her. And we talked about that neuroblastoma does kill some children, but that some survive.
Did she understand what kill meant?
I'm sorry, what?
Did she understand what kill or
yes,
death meant?
Because we had never told her when children had passed at the hospital, but this girl she saw every single week, and we knew she was going to ask, and we knew she was going to hear. So she started crying, and she said, I don't want to talk about it. And she really, I think, channeled a lot of that into her lemonade stand. She really took it to the next level at that point, became more determined to get the word out and let people know that there's a need for pediatric cancer research. Towards the end of her life, the topic was brought up several times. At one point, she also said that she was done. And I told her that was okay, as long as she understood what that meant. And she said, of course I understand what it means. And I said, let's sleep on it and we'll talk again in the morning. And in the morning, she woke up and she said, I want you to call the doctor, and he better have a plan, and he better have a backup plan, because
this is Alex talking?
Yeah. And because I want to keep fighting. So right till the end, she really was a believer in the latest treatments and doing all she could for herself. But I really think she wanted more time. She wanted time to do the things she wanted to do. And my other children, it was a different story because we did protect them. My take on it was, I can't even deal with this. How do I expect a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old, and certainly the 1-year-old, to deal with it? In retrospect, I think my 10-year-old needed to know a little sooner. He had asked me, is Alex going to die, a couple years before? And I was very caught off guard, and I said, maybe, but hopefully not. And I thought it satisfied him, but I think the discussion should have continued, and I think up until the end, he didn't know until a couple days before. I think he would have appreciated, at that age, the time to spend, not just, with my sister, but to really spend and have quality time with her.
Jay, how did your children handle this?
we had been put in touch with a cancer caregiver through our oncologist as our marriage was struggling and to deal with the demands and the stress and the cancer. And one of the topics that we had brought up was when do we tell our children who were very young at the time. And she said, their concept of dying is not quite formed like an adult's. And if you say, Daddy's going to die of cancer, or we think that, Daddy might die of cancer, they think it's today, tonight, or tomorrow. So she said, you want to wait until Randy is so symptomatic that it's very obvious he's really sick. And then you let them bring up the conversation. Now, obviously, my daughter was not quite 2, so she wasn't as perceptive as my other 2 boys. My older son started exhibiting signs of stress. He went and hid behind his sister's hamper, wouldn't come out. So I went up and talked with him, and at that point he did bring up the subject. And I asked him, what did he think it was? And he said, I think Daddy's sick, but I don't know what it is. And so I asked him if he wanted to know. And if he had said no, he didn't want to know, then I wouldn't have gone any further. But he said, yeah, he wanted to know. So I told him that Daddy's cancer had come back, and we had explained cancer. We used an analogy, well, Randy did, of cancer being like a weed growing in the garden. And the doctors had used medicine and surgery to try to get the weed out, but it had come back. And they were giving Daddy special medicine to kill the cancer. So the major points that I made sure to tell him, and I had written these down on note cards, and I had practiced these because I knew it was going to happen. So I had practiced these points. It was, you didn't do anything to make Daddy have cancer. You didn't do anything. You can't do anything to make the cancer go away. And that Daddy didn't want to have cancer, and he didn't want to die. And we were doing everything we could so that he would live. And that seemed to satisfy him. But then, of course, he is Randy's son. So he asked me, Mommy, if you had to bet, would you bet that Daddy was going to live, or would you bet that he was going to die? Because Randy had taught him probability. And I didn't know about probability. So there I was in a predicament, and I said to him very honestly, I'm afraid to venture a guess, because if I tell you Daddy's going to live and then he dies, I'm afraid you'll be angry at me. And yet, conversely, if I tell you Daddy's going to die and he lives, I'm afraid you'll be angry at me. And he said, Mommy, I won't be angry. What do you think is going to happen? And I lied to him. I lied to my son, and I told him that his father was going to live. Because I didn't want him to look at his father every day and have that stress that his daddy was going to die today. So, and this happened about a month before Randy passed away. It happened on Father's Day, actually, and it was awful, because as soon as I finished telling my son, then I had to go and talk to my husband to let him know what had transpired, and it was very upsetting. It was very, very upsetting for Randy to have to talk to him.
Death is difficult for adults to discuss, let alone for children. Although Alex was an adult, the more I hear